All right, so welcome back to our afternoon session on a little bit of more, flesh to the bones, if you like. So we want to talk a little bit about marketing, which will help you define more how your business idea, how your model suits your customer, and how you can also reach that customer. And therefore, we like to take a little bit of a fresh look towards the marketing 4Ps. For sure, during your studies, you have come across those 4Ps of marketing, which are product, price, promotion, and place, or whatever other order you prefer. So this is kind of the basic ground that we build on, but we would like to twist that around and turn that into a customer point of view. So price can also be translated in the cost to the customer. So is anybody willing to pay for your product? And we just heard from Kavita Svecha and Margot Chata, who have been with one group who struggled a little bit with that. So is actually anybody gonna pay us for that service? So this is a very crucial question, of course, to ask. How can you price your product or your service to make sure that people actually are willing to pay for that? Then the second piece, if you twist that to the customer view, is the convenience. So how can your customer get the product? We touched on that in the business model. So how you're going to deliver the product. So does the customer need to go to a shop? Can he order online? Do you have a combination of it? Is it a delivery service, so it's brought to you? Or how is actually the distribution going to happen from the customer's perspective? And the third one is the customer needs, or also the product features. So is everything met by your product? And for sure, by now you have come across some of your testing already, probably. So you will have got some feedback from your potential customers, from your persona target group on the needs that are met by your feature. And you might tweak it a little bit, right? You might think, yeah, we thought we would like to add this feature, but now after talking to some people, we think we need to add this other feature. So what are the features that you provide, and why do you do that? Because your customers have a certain need. And again, you can be of different opinion in your teams. Maybe some say this is not that necessary, this might be more necessary. Doesn't matter that much what you think. So the worm must taste good to the fish and not to the fisherman or fisherwoman. So this is really key, that your customer likes the product features. And then finally, promotion you can turn into communication. So how is your customer addressed? So which are the channels your customer use to inform themselves, to talk together, which are the social media channels, and so on and so forth. And then you must make sure that you communicate via these same channels to hit the needs. This is the idea. Okay, we do a little exercise now in the chat. So if you please be so kind to give us some information exactly on that. What do you think in terms of the cost to the customer is, can you think of cost to the customer? Just think about. What's the bandwidth of to think about? It's probably easier when we talk about pricing, right? But we talk about, it's the same as talking.
What you have done with the 4Ps, 5Ps would, I don't think so it would work here like that.
It might. It's just translating that, right? So if we talk about cost to the customer, we think about pricing. And if you think about pricing, what do you have in mind? So you can, for example, high price, low price. You can also say something like, if you talk about apps, what are the different models? So think about that. Value of the product, Raksha put, exactly. Subscription fee, yes. Premium. What's the opposite of premium, Oliver? Freemium, yes. Thank you, exactly. Follow the cheap, follow the free, yes. Yeah, that sounds good for a start on the pricing. Then what about if we talk about the convenience, which would be the place? So how does your customers Oops, problems typing now, sorry. Convenience. How would you get customers get your product? What are the different ways? We talked about 2 or 3 of them in the business model this morning. So what are different models here? There would be distribution or place in the old logic, convenience. How is your service getting? App Store, Google Play. Yes, if we talk about apps, for sure. What else? Let's assume somebody is talking about a service. Direct and indirect distribution, yes. Social media would probably go more in the direction of the promotion piece. So how is your product or service communicated? Unless you have a purchasing way in social media, Anujin. That might also be the case. I don't know, maybe that's also done. Alicia has put nearest location. Yes, absolutely. So do you just go online store, or yeah, that would be physical store, nearest location, website, home deliveries? Yes. Oh yeah, Bettina, platforms like Amazon, very well done. How do you call that? Is there a term for that? Stationary trade. Okay, stationary trade, I think, is really the e-commerce. Yeah. Trade platforms, e-commerce site. Yes. Marketplaces, this was the term I was looking for. Thank you, Nelson. A marketplace and an online marketplace. So Amazon is just the most famous example, but there are also small marketplaces out there. And maybe you're in a niche where an alternative marketplace makes a lot of sense. I mean, especially if we go in the direction of social businesses or social business ideas, then Amazon most likely is not the right place to be, but some alternative smaller marketplace. Clicks versus bricks, Kavita, fantastic. That means, you know, stationary supply versus online. That's what you mean? All right, I think we got a couple of stuff already. So let's move on to the product customer needs. It's the most difficult, I guess, because we've talked already a lot about the needs and so on. So it might be difficult to abstract that a little bit more in terms of, yeah, generalizing it. Startup revenue models.
To the former one.
To the former one, yes. Customer needs, so the product. Yeah, for example, let me help you. You can go high end or low end, right? So you can, for example, think about if you want to have a premium version, let's go away from an app, but to a real product. You can have the even in delivery services, you can have, do you guys know Dollar Shave Club? I think some might know Dollar Shave Club, that they turned around the business model for shavers, right? So they said you don't need to go to a drugstore and buy it, but that is shipped to you. And they have also like 2 different models. Also obviously it's reflected in the price. They have the cheap model, $1 per month, and the $6 per month. And then obviously the $6 model is superior in quality, so has different features. So this is also something you can think about. Do you need different versions of your product, like a more premium version or a basic version, and not only with apps, something like that. Last but not least, let's talk about communication, which is the former. Promotion piece, but communication is actually much more communicative, I think, than promotion. So communication, what social media, yes, Sujan, thank you. Newsletters, yeah, that's still exist, still around, right? I was thinking that newsletters would go away rather soon, but they're still around. What else? How can you communicate? Word of mouth is a good one. Pamphlets, yes. Like flyers, things like that. Something that's not happening at the moment, traditional media, obviously, TV, radio, billboards, that might be not those media that startups generally can use because they're too expensive, but obviously in the long term and thinking about your strategy, you should think about it. Events, campaigns, that goes to probably what I just said is not allowed at the moment, right? Events, trade fairs. Trade fairs was not mentioned. So that is still an important thing. And nowadays, trade fairs often have moved to the digital space. So they're just not happening in these big trade fair halls, but just happening in the online world. So that's also there. Anything else you can think of? Sponsorships, very good. Yeah, perfect, Oliver. Sponsoring. Do you know what product placement is? Anybody? And then we call it a day. Product placement, that might also be a nice idea if that's especially when a product is starred in a movie. You know, all know James Bond movies, and you all know the Omega watches this guy's wearing, or the car he's driving. So that is not just coincidence. This is really planned, and this is called product placement. And you might do that even with not so well-known products, and they might get a lot of publicity. You can start also with smaller TV shows or with influencers. Obviously, if you pay influencers to wear your products or to promote your products, that would be a good addition. So influencer marketing, we should also add here. Thanks for participating. We call it a day here.
One question.
For sure.
For example, because I can't remember what it's called, and maybe you could help me. But for example, in ski parks, there are usually Red Bull fridges or Monster fridges put there by Red Bull or Monster, and people can just grab one before they go down the slope. What is that kind of distribution called?
We would call that point of sale marketing, if you actually can also then purchase more of it at that point. But point of sale is more used in actually in stores. We would call that promotion, in fact. So so promoting your things at the center of attention, we would call that promotion activities.
And as far as product placement.
Yeah, I think product placement is, I was thinking about that too, Bettina. I'm not too sure. I mean, let's agree, we are not very, it's probably called product placement as well. It's not in a movie, but it's in a setting where people actually view that and have it very prominently, yeah.
Because usually they are giving, the Red Bull is giving it for free in many occasions. I had a project with Red Bull once, and that it is visible. And they are hoping that many people are making picture and distributing it via social media, and they're covering all their sports activity. So it's more, product placement is more known in movies where you see the product and it's getting visible and promoted.
Yeah, it's probably a mix, I would say, between product placement, sponsoring also, because they give it out for free, and then point of sale and promotion activities. Yeah. Are you happy with the answer, Oliver?
Yes, thank you.
So
awesome.
I put a couple of documents or links in the chat, just not random, I would say, but there is a lot of information on Google where you get inspirations what other startups do in the context of revenue model, but also how do they get the customer fast and easy, and are providing need and getting the communication in place most effectively and efficiently, or also in a very creative manner, that they are visible to their target group and getting awareness, interest, desire, and action. So communication plays a huge part in the whole marketing context. And this is why we would like to emphasize a little bit on that. So there is an important difference between regular product communication and communication in the context of novelties, of innovation. And so your solution the entrepreneurship idea, the startup idea you're working on should have something valuable, yes, and unique, and should be new to the world somehow. And so the communication of innovation has, as I said, differentiated elements to product that is already very mature and very known in the market. And there is a famous researcher called Rogers who identified what is different and what needs to be addressed. And many elements are closely linked to the characteristics of innovation. So there's something new and people would like to know, yes, it's new, but what is different and what is the relative advantage to what I have? This is why we're pushing. So what is the value to your user? What is the uniqueness to what is already there? And this has to be, of course, positive. So you would have to have a relative advantage to what is already existing and known in the market. It should be compatible. What we mean by that is we know certain things, we are doing certain things in a manner. For example, we are used to charge a car. So not charge, we are used to fill up a car with gasoline. So the behavior to charge a car is very new. So this is why one inventor from SAP, he had the idea using gas filling station for swappable batteries, that we are not changing our behavior so differently. And the compatibility is used very much in the media context, where new media formats copied the behavior of old formats. So that in the beginning of television, ages ago, the program was very similar to radio. And later on, websites have been similar to newspaper, but now the behavior is very differently. So that not everything is very new to you, because if we have to change our behavior, this costs energy, it's complex, and we do not like to do that from the tendency. So the closer we are able to be to our routine processes, approaches, values, the easier it is to switch to the novel solution. When it comes complexity, it's the other way around. Of course, it should be at the least complex as possible, so negative. So it should be easy to use, as easy as possible, that we do not have to think. And tryability, again, positive. If it's easy to try it out, and also the next, if we see the solution and can try it out, or if we see other people using it, it helps to disseminate the novelty, the innovation. So have in mind a positive relative advantage, a positive compatibility to our behavior, processes, and routines, low complexity, as easy to use as possible. We should be able to try it out easily, and we should observe other people doing that. Because this was pretty theoretical and abstract, we have an example. For the sake of time, I'm walking you through. So you haven't been born, but our grandparents, for many of them, they didn't know the phone, the regular phone. We are not talking about cell phone. And the adoption of cell phone took quite a while. Why? And let's take these 5 areas. First, relative advantage. So it was very expensive at that time. And for most of the Americans, because Bell invented it, it was not affordable. And you haven't had the need, you didn't felt the need to call someone, because you have been so used, I'm talking to someone when I meet him or her. And talking to someone was also for many people not so easily, because they haven't had a phone. So even if you would be rich and you had a phone, whom to call? So what is the value of this new innovation? Compatibility. It was so new, people didn't know with what to compare. They had no references and they were actually scared. So there is a black box and a voice comes out. Can it transfer diseases? And you see that with the complexity. People were really scared, and they were used to, when they had to use this fast messaging services, they were in favor of telegrams, or letters, but not a phone. Complexity, the technology behind was so hard to understand for them, and they had no comparison. And that also leads to this scariness. What is that? How does this work? I don't get it. I do not want to use it because there could be something bad in it. And people avoid buying this new technology. Because not many people had it, they have not been able to try it easily, and they have not been able to observe others in using it. And this led to a slow adoption of the cell phone decades ago, just as an example. So, but coming back, when you would like to bring your solution in the market, you need to address that you have a clear advantage to what is existing. You work with elements that are already known. You make it as easy to use as possible. And in the communication, you should find ways that the users can try it out and observe others in doing it, because this would help you in the adoption. We talked several times about your target group, and you will see my comments in the business model. Yes, even if you target obese teenagers, not every obese teenager, even theoretically, would be your first customer, because people have they are different open to innovation. And also Rogers identified that in the adoption curve. He recognized that innovators by themselves are the most open, are the most adaptable to other innovations. For example, Elon Musk used that in introducing the Tesla. He invited all the startup owners like Larry Page and the professors at Stanford who are working on novelties to see the Tesla first, the first Roadster, and to check out the Tesla Roadster and to buy the Roadster. So he specifically target innovators, and they are people who are innovative by themselves, but they have money, they are often well educated, and they are eager to have the latest stuff. The next group are the early adopters, and the tendency of early adopters is also well informed, and they are looking what the innovators are doing and they are copying them. And often they have also money or a higher average salary than the rest, and are also more open to change and novelties. So have that in mind. Whom are you going to target in your with your novelty in your marketing plan? You do not have to address the world. With whom are you starting? Who would be your first 100 or 1,000 customers? And how are you going to address them? That is something we would like to know tomorrow, and of course in the final presentation. In the slide deck are more information about adaptation and diffusion, but we do not want to overwhelm you. So here you see in the upcoming slides are information about each stakeholder group, the innovators, the early adopters, the early majority, because they provide or they have certain characteristics. And use these characteristics to figure out who's your target group and how are you going to address them. Okay, communicatively. Are you taking over, Verena?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, I will. You can see it, all right? Can you see my screen? You have to stop, Bettina.
Yep.
And then people should automatically see financials. Do you see financials?
Yep.
Seems we're experts now, almost, on switching screens. Yes, fantastic. Learned something today. So talking about finance as another, which will help you in the lower section of your business model, right? When we talk about the costs and the revenues. So it's really key that you make some assumptions regarding any type of initial investments you have. So if you want to get going ahead with your business idea, are there any initial investments that you need? Let's say you would like to open up a frozen yogurt store in Durban city center. Yeah, then you would have obviously some investments to take for buying some frozen yogurt machines and making that rented piece of shop look nice, and you want to buy some t-shirts for your staff, whatever. So some sorts of initial investments. So think if you have those elements in there. And then very importantly, you have to make up your mind, how big is your market and what share can you aim for? Bettina just said, if you're tackling obese teenagers, that's your market then. So the number of obese teenagers on this planet, or if you want to start in one country or one region, that's another story. But this would then be your total market population. And then think about how many of these people will, in the very first place, start to be your customers. Yeah, who are these early innovators who join you, and then how does that develop? So over time, how is your market share gonna grow, and how many of those obese teenagers are going to become your customers? So these are very crucial thoughts to have at the very beginning, which you then need for understanding and calculating your earning and cost structure better. If you have no idea like how many people are gonna take and buy your products, it's really difficult. And then once you've done those two things, so you know if there are any initial investments like fixed costs that you have that you cannot go away, fixed costs at the very beginning, but then also going forward. And then think about what are your variable costs, and put those costs together, and then put those earnings together. So how do you make money? And going back to our bakery example, you have to, in this very simple example, you sell a certain amount of bread and you get a certain amount of revenue for that. In other business models, it's more difficult. So for example, if you have an app and you have a freemium and a premium version, then you get some earnings from the premium version, and then you have to say, is this a continuous thing? So do people pay annually a certain amount, or is it a one-time fee that they pay and then they can use the app forever? So what do you earn in the next couple of years? And if it's a freemium model, then you don't earn anything from your customers, but you might do some advertising in your app, and you might generate earnings from that. So make these thoughts, and to point it out very clearly, we would not accept a business model that's based on donations. So if you say we have a couple of costs and we fund ourselves purely from donations, this is not what we want. So we encourage you to do social businesses. That does not mean that you are based on donations or do any kind of charity or something like that. It has to be also an economically a business, in a business sense, a sustainable business model, in a sense that you at least cover your costs. So this is the minimum requirement for this course. You have to show that your business model earns that much that you can at least cover your costs. And then if you earn more than that, that's fantastic. And also a social business does not mean that you shouldn't make any money, not at all, right? So the more money you can generate with your social business, the more new other social business you can build with that excess money, or the more reach you can generate, or the more you can scale up. So making money with a social business idea is fantastic. It's the best thing you can do. So it doesn't mean social is equal, we don't generate earnings or revenue. This is not the case. And the minimum requirement, as I said, is that you at least cover your complete costs that would be necessary. Yeah, so basing something on donation is not what we want in this course.
Yes, and we know it is tricky to know what the costs of human resources or office rooms are. Make an estimated guess. You can also look up, use Google to figure out what other teams have calculated, and round it up. So what is also not very convincing, and we saw that a couple of times in the financial, that they are putting it's 1,843 and 23 cents. Don't do that. Have a rough estimation that you get in the thinking, if you would like to make money, how are we making money? How much money are we able to make? But also, what are the costs we need to cover? So, and what are the elements of the underlying cost, not centers, but costs element?
Thank you, Bettina. And I think for the sake of timing, we don't do this exercise again, that you type into the Zoom chat types of earnings and costs you can think of. We've talked about it. It's personnel costs, it's marketing costs, it's cost for your rent you have to cover, and so on and so forth. It's any kinds of initial investments. And then on the earnings side, think about how do you generate money. That's very dependent on what your business model looks like. What, if you like, this is optional, and you see this also marked as optional in your deliverables Google Sheet. So you do not have to do this. If you like, use the financial planning template on Moodle, which you see a screenshot of here. So this just helps you with these thoughts around what are your initial investments, what is the market volume, and what is the share in that market that you can generate now, in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years. So meaning, how can you scale? And then what are your earnings and what are your costs? This simply helps you. You don't need to do this. What we, however, will challenge you in your final presentations, you kind of have to prove that you can make money and at least cover your costs with your business model. So if you introduce an idea to us and say, this is what we do, and we are totally dependent on private people donating to us in a once-a-year charity event at the Oktoberfest, we will not be too happy. So this logic needs to be there. You don't need to show this in real numbers. This is optional. It'll help you, but especially if you're struggling with that part. But other than that, we would like to show you what is your estimate of your costs, what is the estimates of your earnings. This will be enough for your final presentations. Questions to that?
I have a question.
Sure, Konstantina.
Delivered now in the afternoon. Is it more about tomorrow or also for today for the deliverables? Because I think for the deliverables, these are just these testing visions, and this goes more for business for tomorrow. Am I right?
Correct. So this afternoon, you don't have any hard deliverables. So it's just continuing your work. Some you will most likely distribute your work. So some will work on the finance piece, some will work on the marketing, some will finalize their testing. Maybe you have some iterations to do on your business model. Maybe you have some iterations to do on your prototypes, or drive them a little bit further. So this is totally up to you. And this is then, you should have all these things in a let's put it that way, in an enhanced version by tomorrow morning, because tomorrow morning we're going to show you how you do a good pitch, and then you practice your pitch in the afternoon.
Okay, so today, because for example, my team, we concretized that we have to do some changes in our prototype. We can do it today. We can look forward with the testing, the business model, to fulfill all the deliverables in the best way we can, let's say.
Yes.
And those financiation, these are the marketing and financial planning, right?
So yes, the marketing and finance plan as such, as we said, this is optional. So you don't have to fill in this Excel sheet, but it will help you to make up your mind around these points. What you do need to have in your pitch presentations is something about part marketing. So how will you communicate your business to your potential customers? And how is your earning and cost structure? So how do you make money with your business idea? This is what we want to see in your pitch presentations. So there's no hard deadline for that tonight or so, but you have to make your thoughts around that.
And the roadmap.
You're a little ahead of time, Konstantina, because roadmap is the next piece that Bettina is going to introduce in a bit.
But last question before, because tomorrow morning we have to deliver again our prototype with the new solutions, let's say, with some replacements. Has this also to be up to tomorrow, like a video?
No, that's up to you. So I would, it's really, I will say something to the prototype.
Thank you.
Any questions on the finance piece left? If that's not the case, then Bettina, you can take over for the road mapping.
So the last task, what needs to be filled in the pitch presentation, and we're having an introduction in pitching tomorrow, is the road mapping. So what is the road mapping? Sorry, it's going on the other end. It's an overview what needs to be done or what you're planning to do in order to bring your solution to life towards implementation. So market entry and growth. So you see here, it's time to launch and scaling up. So what are the most important milestones in a visualized way with time, spans, and the elements what needs to be done in which area. So here you find in the slide deck an example of a roadmap in the field of these are the big milestones, and you see the quarters. So they had covered 2 years. Many of the teams are covering 3 to 4 years, but this is totally up to you. Of course, if you have a software product, you can be faster in usually than a hardware product, or if you are just focusing on an entry market, and then later on you internationalize in the Europe and European region and later on. So have a look how, what is the time frame you're covering. And here they had areas of product, sales, marketing, and operations. You can get inspired by these kind of roadmap we provided for, and you see, don't get too detailed, but give us an overview what the steps are. So usually this is already too detailed when it comes here. So what are the kind of working packages in each area? So this would be an area and the working packages you're working on in order to achieve a certain milestones. And you see here are the milestones for marketing launch, beta launch, launch, and they haven't covered scaling. And more inspirations and orientations you will find, of course, again, on Google Image Search or Pinterest. These are amazing resources, how they have done it, and just get inspired, take over what is good and suitable, and forget what is not really good and you don't like it and you cannot use it. So what needs to be done this afternoon until tomorrow, but probably also next week, that you continue testing. You have amazing ideas, but you had a visual storyboard and a press release, and sometimes the value proposition are slightly different. Now it's going to merge and figure out what is your solution. Is it a hardware product? Is it a software product? How does it look like? One team already has a Figma, I guess, a Figma prototype, wonderfully visualized with the different features and functions. So this is also what you should do. Of course, what is the next step in your prototype based on feedback of your stakeholders? And how are you going to introduce your prototype? We will talk about that in the pitch presentation tomorrow. So what is to be done based on this afternoon session? What is the impact proposition? What kind of impact do you want to make and you are able to make? What is your marketing plan? Finance plan optional, as Verena said, and the roadmap to launch and possible growth. And like the days before, here are some book recommendations. So this is the standard book for business modeling, Business Model Generation by Alexander Osterwalder. This book is particularly interesting. Oliver Gassmann, a researcher from the University of St. Gallen, he identified patterns of business modeling, for example, the freemium model or razor blade model. So razor blade is you are selling the razors, no, you're selling the blades for a cheaper price because they are locked to the blades. The razors, sorry, again, razor blade. The razors are cheaper, the one you have to exchange on the regular base, but they are just fitting to the blade of this particular company, and you have a lock-in system and you're making the money with the razors because you're using them all the time. So he has a certain kind of patterns in value proposition design, and of course the Lean Startup book by Eric Ries. Do you have any questions? Let's